I destroyed my boyfriend's confidence with a single comment, and now I'm the villain in a story where I swear I was just being honest. Everyone's calling me cruel, telling me I ruined a good man over nothing, but they weren't there when it happened. They don't know what I was thinking or why those words came out the way they did. My best friend won't return my calls. My sister told me I'm lucky he only left instead of destroying my reputation publicly. Even my therapist, my actual therapist, gave me this look last session like she was reconsidering whether I'm salvageable as a human being. They all think I'm shallow, heartless, the kind of person who kicks someone when they're vulnerable. The worst part is I'm starting to wonder if they're right. I'm going to tell you everything, including the part I haven't admitted to anyone yet, the real reason I said what I said. There's something I did right before that conversation that makes the whole thing so much worse, and when you hear it, you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. But I need you to listen to the whole story before you judge me, because the context matters, even if it doesn't excuse what I became. Tyler and I had been together for 2 years when this happened. 2 years of what I genuinely thought was a healthy relationship. We met at a work conference. He was in marketing for a tech startup. I was doing corporate communications for a healthcare company. He approached me at the hotel bar with this self-deprecating joke about the keynote speaker that made me laugh hard enough to snort wine through my nose. That was Tyler, funny, warm, the kind of guy who made everyone around him feel comfortable. Our relationship was easy in the beginning. Date nights every Thursday. Weekend brunches where we'd share the Sunday paper. He'd send me funny memes during my lunch break. I'd leave little notes in his gym bag. My friends loved him. My parents asked when we were getting engaged. Everything looked perfect from the outside, and mostly it felt perfect from the inside too. But there were these small moments that bothered me, moments I pushed down because they seemed petty to mention. Like how he'd always defer to me when we were with my more successful friends, getting quieter when they talked about their promotions or investments. Or how he'd make jokes about punching above his weight when we took photos together. At first I found it endearing, his humility, his lack of ego. Then it started feeling like he was putting himself in a box I never asked him to climb into. The bedroom stuff was fine, not earth-shattering but fine. We had a rhythm, Tuesday nights and Saturday mornings usually. Missionary mostly, sometimes with me on top if we'd had a couple drinks. We both finished. We cuddled after. It worked. I never thought deeply about whether it was everything I wanted because it seemed ungrateful to want more when I had someone who loved me, made me laugh, and never forgot to buy my favorite overpriced granola. Then my college roommate Rachel got engaged, and everything shifted in ways I didn't recognize until it was too late. Rachel was marrying this guy Marcus, total powerhouse, a litigation attorney with a corner office, and a presence that made everyone sit up straighter when he entered a room. At the engagement party, I watched them together, the way he'd touch the small of her back, whisper something in her ear that made her blush, command the room while making her feel like the only person in it. They had this electricity, this magnetic thing that made you unable to look away. Tyler and I went home that night and I felt hollow in a way I couldn't name. He wanted to have sex. I said yes because it was Saturday and that's what we did. And during it I just kept thinking about Marcus and Rachel, about that spark, that intensity. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt genuinely excited about being intimate with Tyler. It was comfortable, predictable, safe, and suddenly safe felt like a prison sentence. I started comparing. That was my first real mistake, though I didn't know it yet. I'd scroll through Rachel's Instagram, seeing her and Marcus at wine tastings, at charity galas, on a yacht somewhere in the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, Tyler and I were doing pub trivia and watching Marvel movies we'd both seen before. I began noticing everything Tyler did that wasn't what Marcus would do. The way he'd ask, "Is this okay?" during sex instead of just knowing. The way he dressed in safe button-downs instead of tailored suits. The way he'd suggest Olive Garden for anniversary dinner instead of the new fusion place everyone was talking about. One night I was texting with Rachel, and she mentioned something about how Marcus had completely destroyed her in the best way the night before. She added a fire emoji. I stared at that message for 10 minutes, feeling something ugly twist in my stomach. Envy maybe, or recognition that I'd never once used those words about Tyler. I'd never been destroyed, I'd been satisfied. Comfortable, content. That's when the really terrible thought entered my mind. Was I settling? I couldn't shake it after that. It infected everything. Tyler would kiss my neck and I'd think, does he even know my spots or is he just guessing? He'd suggest trying something new and I'd wonder if he'd seen it in porn or if he actually understood what I wanted. Everything became evidence of his inadequacy, and the worst part is I started resenting him for not measuring up to a standard I'd never communicated, never even fully acknowledged to myself. Here's the thing nobody knows: I started researching. I went down this internet rabbit hole about passion in long-term relationships and maintaining attraction, and signs you've settled for the wrong person. I took quizzes. I read forums. I even posted anonymously on Reddit asking if other women felt bored in bed with perfectly nice boyfriends. The responses were split. Half the women said I was being shallow and needed to appreciate what I had. The other half said life was too short for mediocre sex and I should either fix it or leave. I decided I needed data. Objective assessment. I needed to know if the problem was Tyler or if it was me expecting too much based on my friend's highlight reel. So I did something I'm not proud of. I started keeping notes. After every intimate encounter, I'd go to the bathroom and write down what we did, how long it lasted, how I felt about it, and give it a mental rating. I told myself this was just me being analytical, trying to identify patterns so I could communicate better about what I needed. Looking back, I was building a case. I was constructing evidence for a verdict I'd already decided on. It went on for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of me documenting our sex life like some kind of twisted scientist. I had a whole note in my phone: dates, times, positions, duration, how many times he asked if I was okay, how many times I actually finished, how I rated the overall experience. The ratings started at 6.10, dropped to 5.10, then 4.10. I was grading my boyfriend's performance like a disappointed teacher, and he had no idea the test was even happening. The ratings might have been going down because the sex was getting worse, or maybe they were going down because I was looking for reasons to score him lower. I genuinely don't know anymore. All I know is that by week 3, I was hate-fucking my boyfriend while simultaneously documenting his failures, and I felt completely justified because I'd convinced myself this was about honest communication and not settling. Then came March 15th, the day everything exploded. Tyler suggested we have a real talk about our relationship. He'd noticed I seemed distant. He wanted to make sure we were okay, wanted to know if there was anything he could do better. He was being vulnerable, open, asking for feedback because he loved me and wanted us to work. It was the perfect opportunity to have an actual adult conversation about desire and compatibility and what we both needed. Instead, I saw it as my moment to deliver the data. We were sitting on the couch. He had his hand on my knee. He looked nervous but hopeful, like he thought maybe I'd been stressed about work and just needed to vent. He said, "I feel like maybe you're not as happy lately. Am I doing something wrong? I should have been kind. I should have been tactful. I should have used 'I feel' statements and talked about my own needs without making it about his shortcomings." But I'd spent 3 weeks building this case, collecting this evidence, and all that data was just burning in my chest, demanding to be acknowledged. I said, "Since you're asking, I have been feeling disconnected, specifically in the bedroom." He sat up straighter. "Okay, yeah, we can work on that. What do you need?" And here's where I should have stopped. Should have said something like, "I think we've gotten into a routine and I'd like to explore mixing things up." Should have made it collaborative. Should have protected his dignity while still expressing my needs. Instead, I said, "I've been thinking about this a lot, and honestly, on average, I'd rate our physical connection around a 3 out of 10. I watched his face change, watched the color drain out of it, watched his hand slip off my knee like he'd touched something hot. He blinked at me, processing, and I could literally see the moment the words landed, the moment they detonated inside him. A 3. His voice was barely above a whisper. And I didn't stop. God, I didn't stop. Some awful part of me wanted to make my case, wanted to prove I wasn't being mean but rather honestly analytical. I said, "I don't mean that to be hurtful. I've just been evaluating things, trying to understand why I'm feeling disconnected, and objectively speaking, the passion isn't where it needs to be. There's not much variety, there's not much intensity, and I think we need to acknowledge that so we can work on it. You've been evaluating." He stood up, backing away from the couch. "What does that mean?" I should have stopped. Right there, I should have seen the devastation spreading across his face and realized I'd crossed a line. But I was in it now, committed to my horrible honesty. I've been keeping track of our intimate moments over the past few weeks. Duration, what we do, how satisfying it is, just trying to identify patterns. "You've been grading me?" His voice cracked. "Like a fucking test, not grading, just assessing. Trying to be objective instead of emotional about it." He laughed, but it was this broken, hollow sound. "Objective, right, and objectively I'm a 3 out of 10. In that specific area, yes, but Tyler, that's why I'm bringing it up, so we can improve, so we can get the fuck out." I'd never heard him use that tone before, cold, final. "Tyler, you asked for honesty, you asked what was wrong." I asked if I was doing something wrong, and apparently the answer is fucking everything. He was shaking now. "I asked because I love you and I wanted to fix whatever was making you unhappy. I didn't ask to be reduced to a number. I didn't ask to find out my girlfriend's been running experiments on me without my knowledge. That's not what this was." Then what was it? "Because from where I'm standing, you spent 3 weeks pretending everything was fine while secretly documenting all the ways I disappoint you. And then you sat me down and delivered your findings like I'm some employee at your shitty corporate job." He went into the bedroom, we were at his place, and I heard drawers opening. He came back out with my overnight bag, started shoving my things into it. My phone charger, my toothbrush, the spare clothes I kept there. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry, I said it wrong, I didn't mean to hurt you. You rated me a 3 out of 10. In what world does that not hurt? But you asked what was wrong? Yeah, and there are 1,000 ways you could have answered that didn't involve telling me I'm basically failing at being a man. That stopped me. I never said that. You didn't have to. He thrust the bag at me. Every time I asked if you were okay during sex, every time I checked in, I was trying to make sure you were comfortable, that you were enjoying yourself. And apparently that was just more evidence that I'm terrible at this. That I'm not confident enough, not good enough, not a fucking 10 out of 10 like whoever you're comparing me to. I'm not comparing you to anyone. Bullshit. You don't wake up one day and decide to scientifically measure your boyfriend's dick game unless someone put the idea in your head that it's supposed to be different. Better, more. He was right. He was absolutely right, but I couldn't admit it because that would mean acknowledging how shallow and cruel I'd been. So I went on the defensive. I'm allowed to want passion in my relationship. I'm allowed to want to feel desired and excited, not just comfortable. And I'm allowed to be with someone who doesn't treat me like a research project. He opened his apartment door. Get out, I mean it, get the fuck out and don't contact me. I left. I stood in his hallway with my overnight bag listening to him lock the door, and I felt this surge of righteous indignation. I'd been honest. He'd asked for honesty. How was I the bad guy for telling him the truth? I texted him that night, I know you're hurt, but I was trying to be honest so we could work on things. That's what healthy couples do. He didn't respond. I texted him the next morning, can we please talk about this like adults? Nothing. By day 3 I called. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message explaining that I'd approached it wrong but my intentions were good, that I loved him, that we could get past this. No callback. I messaged him on Instagram. He'd blocked me. Facebook blocked. Twitter blocked. It was like I'd been erased from his digital existence overnight. That's when I started to panic. Not because I'd realized how badly I'd hurt him, but because I was losing control of the narrative. I needed him to understand my side, to see that I wasn't the villain here. I was just someone who wanted more from a relationship, which was my right. Wasn't it? I showed up at his apartment on day 5, buzzed his unit. No answer. Waited outside until someone let me into the building, went up to his floor, knocked on his door. I could hear the TV on inside. I knew he was there. Tyler, please just give me 5 minutes, let me explain. The TV volume increased. I know I hurt you, I know I said it badly, but you have to understand where I was coming from. I felt trapped and I didn't know how to communicate it, and it came out all wrong. A neighbor opened their door, gave me a look, asked if everything was okay. I left. I told my best friend Jenna everything, expecting sympathy. Expecting her to agree that yes, I'd been tactless, but at least I'd been honest, and wasn't honesty the foundation of good relationships? She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You kept a spreadsheet? Not a spreadsheet, just notes. You graded him, you told him he was a 3 out of 10. I was trying to be specific instead of vague. Isn't that better than just saying things aren't working without details? Becca, you destroyed that man's confidence. You told someone who loved you that he's basically terrible in bed, and you did it with receipts, with data, like he's a fucking Yelp review. He asked what was wrong, and you could have said you wanted to try new things. You could have suggested doing something different together. You could have said literally anything except I've been secretly grading your performance and you're failing. But I didn't want to hear it. I told Jenna she didn't understand, that I'd been dying slowly in a relationship that looked fine but felt empty, that I deserved to be honest about my needs. She told me there's a difference between honesty and cruelty, and I'd crossed that line into something that looked a lot like emotional abuse. I stopped talking to Jenna after that. My sister Melissa had the same reaction, though she was less kind about it. She said I was lucky Tyler only ghosted me instead of telling everyone what I'd done, because if he wanted to, he could make me a pariah in our social circle. She said I needed to leave him alone and get therapy to figure out why I thought treating people like science experiments was acceptable behavior. I stopped talking to Melissa too. My mom called, having heard some version of events from Melissa. She was diplomatic but clearly disappointed. She asked me what I'd been hoping to accomplish with that conversation. I told her I wanted Tyler to know the truth so we could fix things. She asked if I'd stopped to consider whether the problem was fixable, or if I'd already decided the relationship was over and just wanted to make it his fault. I hung up on her. Here's what I told myself in those first 2 weeks: I was the wronged party. I'd been slowly suffocating in a relationship that didn't meet my needs, and when I finally got honest about it, everyone acted like I was a monster. The problem wasn't what I'd said, it was that people couldn't handle a woman being direct about sexual satisfaction. If Tyler had told me I wasn't meeting his needs, everyone would have supported him. But because I was the woman criticizing the man's performance, I was cruel. I actually posted about it on Reddit, on one of those relationship advice forums. I laid out the whole situation, maybe slightly edited to make me look better, leaving out the part about the notes, softening the 310 to below average. I expected validation. I expected people to tell me I'd done nothing wrong, that sexual compatibility mattered, that I shouldn't have to fake satisfaction. Instead, I got eviscerated. Hundreds of comments calling me everything from shallow to abusive. People analyzing my word choices, pointing out all the ways I dehumanized my partner. Someone said, "You didn't want to fix the relationship. You wanted permission to feel superior while leaving it." The post got cross-posted to other subreddits. Strangers were discussing what a terrible person I was. I deleted everything and made my account private, but screenshots were already circulating. That's when I found out Tyler was seeing someone else. Not seeing that makes it sound more serious than it was at that point. But he was photographed at a mutual friend's birthday party with a woman I didn't recognize. In the photo, he's smiling, actually smiling, the real smile he used to give me in the early days, and she's laughing at something he said, touching his arm. I felt like I'd been punched in the throat. It had been 3 weeks. 3 weeks since our conversation, and he was already moving on. Already laughing with someone else while I was still trying to get him to talk to me? I created a fake Instagram account to look at his profile since he blocked me. That's where I saw more photos. Tyler at a concert. Tyler at brunch. Tyler at a hiking trail I'd always wanted to go to but we'd never made it to. And in several of them there she was petite, blonde, kind of artsy looking with vintage band t-shirts and what looked like a thrift store aesthetic. I spiraled. I started checking his social media obsessively, multiple times a day, documenting every post, every interaction, every time she appeared in his life. The irony of me doing the exact same tracking behavior that had ruined our relationship wasn't lost on me, but I couldn't stop. I needed to know if this was serious. I needed to know if he'd replaced me. Her name was Sophie. I found her profile. She was a graphic designer into rock climbing and ceramics, had a cat named Bowie. She seemed cool, effortlessly cool in the way I'd never been. And worse, she seemed genuinely kind. Her Instagram was full of supportive comments on friends' posts, photos from volunteer work at an animal shelter, 0 selfies with thirsty captions. I hated her. I hated her for being the kind of person Tyler deserved. I hated her for getting the version of him that was happy and free instead of the version I'd beaten down with my criticism. I hated her for not even knowing I existed, for getting to start fresh with him while I was stuck being the villain in his origin story. One night after too much wine, I messaged her from my real account. I told myself I was just being friendly, just introducing myself as Tyler's ex, just making sure she knew what she was getting into. The message said, "Hey, I saw you've been hanging out with Tyler. Just wanted to give you a heads up that he's got some pretty significant intimacy issues. Thought you should know before you get too invested. Good luck." She screenshotted it and sent it to Tyler. I know this because Tyler finally broke his silence to send me one message: "Leave me alone. Leave Sophie alone. If you contact either of us again, I'm filing a restraining order." I'm not kidding. That's when I started to break. I called in sick to work for 3 days. I didn't shower. I didn't eat anything except stale crackers and ice cream. I just stayed in bed refreshing Tyler's Instagram, looking at photos of him smiling with this new woman, torturing myself with the evidence that he was fine, better than fine without me. My therapist, who I'd started seeing a year earlier for work stress, asked me directly in our next session, "Do you think you sabotaged your relationship because you were afraid of being happy?" I told her that was ridiculous. I sabotaged it because I was being honest about my needs. "You sabotaged it," she said, "by approaching your partner's vulnerability like a performance review instead of a conversation. You collected evidence against him and then presented it as if he should thank you for the feedback. So I was supposed to just stay unhappy? You were supposed to ask yourself if you wanted to fix things or if you wanted to blow them up. Because the way you approached that conversation, keeping notes, assigning numbers, building a case, that's not someone trying to improve a relationship. That's someone trying to win an argument they're having with themselves." I didn't go back to that therapist, but her words stuck with me. They burrowed into my brain and nested there, popping up at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep, when I was scrolling through old photos of Tyler and me from when things were good. Had I been arguing with myself? Had I decided the relationship was wrong and then looked for evidence to prove it? Work became unbearable. Our social circles overlapped and word had gone around about what happened. Not the details, Tyler hadn't told anyone the specifics because he was a better person than me, but enough that people knew we'd broken up and it was somehow my fault. Mutual friends started declining my invitations to hang out. Group chats went quiet when I chimed in. I got left off the invite list for Rachel's bachelorette party, and when I asked her about it, she said, "I don't think it's a good idea right now. You're going through something and I think you need space to work on yourself." Translation: I didn't want to be associated with the girl who crushed her boyfriend's soul with a PowerPoint presentation of his inadequacies. I saw them together in person 2 months after our breakup. I was at a coffee shop in our neighborhood, Tyler's neighborhood. Really, I'd moved across town after the breakup but came back hopping to run into him, hopping for a chance to talk. And there they were in line together, Tyler's arm around her waist, her leaning into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. I hid behind my laptop and watched them order. Watched Tyler pull out his wallet and pay for both drinks. Watch Sophie stand on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek while they waited. Watch them laugh about something on her phone. They looked happy. They looked easy together. They looked like what Tyler and I had looked like in the beginning before I started measuring and judging and finding him lacking. When they left, I cried into my cold brew until the barista asked if I was okay. The worst part, the part I haven't told anyone until right now, is that I know exactly when I decided Tyler wasn't enough. I can pinpoint the moment. It was at Rachel's engagement party watching Marcus command the room, and I made a choice. I chose to believe that what they had was the standard and anything less was settling. I chose to look at my perfectly good relationship and decide it was broken because it wasn't Instagram-worthy enough, passionate enough, impressive enough to brag about. And then I spent 3 weeks building a case to justify that choice. I created evidence. I manufactured data to support a conclusion I'd already reached. I turned Tyler into a research subject so I wouldn't have to admit that the problem wasn't him. It was me wanting something I'd seen someone else have. Me being greedy, me being unable to appreciate what I had because I was too busy looking at what someone else had. Tyler wasn't a 3 out of 10. Our relationship wasn't failing. I was just measuring it against a fantasy, and when reality couldn't compete with fantasy, I decided reality was deficient. The thing nobody knows, the thing I buried so deep I almost convinced myself it wasn't true, is that I never actually wanted to fix things. I wanted permission to leave. I wanted Tyler to be the problem so I wouldn't have to be. I wanted to be the victim of an unfulfilling relationship instead of the person who couldn't appreciate a good thing. So I destroyed him. I took every insecurity he had about not being good enough for me and I confirmed them. I validated his worst fears about himself with numbers and analysis and clinical detachment. I made him feel like he'd failed at being a man, at being a partner, at being desirable. And I did it all while telling myself I was just being honest. And the worst part, the absolute worst fucking part, is that even after all of this, even after losing him and losing friends and becoming a cautionary tale about toxic honesty, there's still a part of me that thinks I was right to want more. I matched with someone on a dating app last month. We went out twice. He was attractive, successful, interesting. On the second date, he suggested we go back to his place and we did, and the sex was fine. Not earth-shattering, just fine. And I caught myself starting to analyze it, starting to compare it to the fantasy I had in my head of what good sex should be, and I realized I was about to do it again. I'm about to turn 32. I'm single. Half my friends won't talk to me. I've become the story people tell at parties about toxic exes and dodged bullets. Tyler's apparently getting serious with Sophie. I heard through the grapevine that he introduced her to his parents last month. My sister told me mom asks about me but doesn't call anymore because she doesn't know what to say. I started seeing a new therapist. This one specializes in attachment issues and self-sabotage. In our third session, she asked me what I thought I deserved in a relationship, and I couldn't answer. I genuinely didn't know. I knew what I wanted: passion, intensity, excitement, the kind of connection that looks good on social media and makes people jealous. But what did I deserve? Maybe exactly what I got: nothing. Maybe I deserved to be alone, to be the cautionary tale, to watch the person I damaged find happiness with someone who doesn't treat love like a science experiment. I'm telling you this story now because I just found out Tyler's engaged. I saw the announcement on Instagram. My fake account is still active, still checking his profile like a wound I can't stop picking at. He proposed to Sophie at the same hiking trail that showed up in those early photos. The ring is beautiful. She's beautiful. He looks happier than I've ever seen him, and it's been exactly 1 year since I told him he was a 3 out of 10. I want to reach out and apologize. I want to send him a message explaining that I finally understand what I did, that I've spent a year unpacking my issues and I realize how badly I hurt him. I want him to know that he wasn't the problem, that he was never the problem. But that's selfish too, isn't it? That's me trying to make myself feel better, trying to absolve myself of guilt by dumping my revelation on him when he's finally moved on. He's happy. He's building a life with someone who presumably doesn't grade his performance or compare him to someone else's highlight reel. The last thing he needs is me crashing back into his life with my too-late epiphany. So I'm here instead, telling strangers on the internet about the time I destroyed a good relationship, because I couldn't tell the difference between honest communication and cruel judgment. I'm here admitting that I turned the person who loved me into a data point, that I confused my own insecurity with his inadequacy, that I sacrificed something real for something imaginary. I don't know if I've actually learned anything, or if I'm just better at articulating my failures. I don't know if I'm capable of the kind of love that doesn't come with asterisks and conditions. I don't know if the next person I date will be enough, or if I'll find new ways to measure and dismiss and determine that they're lacking. What I do know is that somewhere in this city, Tyler is planning a wedding to a woman who probably never once made him feel like he wasn't enough. And I'm here still trying to figure out why enough was never enough for me. Judge me if you want. Tell me I got what I deserved. Tell Tell me I'm the villain in this story and Tyler's the hero who escaped. You'd be right. But if you're sitting there reading this and thinking about all the ways your own partner doesn't measure up to some imaginary standard, if you're keeping mental notes about their shortcomings, if you're comparing your reality to someone else's carefully curated fantasy, maybe think about what you're actually measuring. Because I measured everything except what mattered. And now all I have left are the notes on my phone, evidence of a relationship I destroyed one rating at a time.